Kaushal, could you please tell us what is ROAS?
Return on advertising spend, ROAS, is a metric that is used to measure the effectiveness of a campaign. Most of the marketers would use this metric to compare two different channels and their performance, how channel X performed versus channel Y, or how the channel X performed, let's say in the month of January versus in the month of February. So that's a metric which is used. Usually it is calculated by taking the revenue which was generated online via a particular, let's say an online shopping store, or maybe even some other websites which has revenue which is clearly getting attributed to the website, right? And dividing it by the cost. Now, this is what is giving you the return on advertising spend. Revenue which was generated by a particular channel divided by the cost which was invested to acquire that particular revenue. And that's where the ROS is generated.
In your experience, what are the usual return on advertising spends?
This depends on various factors: the maturity of the website, the maturity of the business as well, plus the maturity of the campaign. There would be several other factors which would determine it, but I would term this as the major factors. The ROS, again, the way it gets calculated, right? Revenue divided by the cost. Now, in many cases, it happens that, okay, the business is doing really well, or is working on products which have really high margins or cost really high. In such cases, you will see a very different ROS as compared to some other industries where the revenue is much lesser per product or per this thing, right? So that way, when you're looking at this particular metric, it depends on various factors. I've seen campaigns where the ROS is almost zero, where the business has just started, they've started doing some campaigns, they're spending millions, but yes, it's generating zero revenue, right? In such cases, the ROS is also zero. Plus, there are businesses where we have seen really good ROS. In my personal experience, I've been looking at campaigns which have generated an average of around 1,500x ROS. Yes, and when I'm speaking of 1,500x ROS in terms of percentage, this would mean 150,000 percentage. Now, these are the campaigns which stand apart. Think of having such a channel in your kitty. When you are a marketer, even if you have one particular channel which is delivering this kind of ROS, your overall ROS of the overall marketing increases tremendously, right? And every marketer would like to have some channels like this in their pocket. Now, when we speak of this kind of channels, these are usually, in my experience, I've seen these are channels which are search engine optimization as such, which delivers this kind of thing. Personally, this particular brand which I know of has been investing in SEO for the last many years. Continuous investment, month-on-month investment happening on search engine optimization. And that's something which is helping them to generate really good ROAS.
With regards to the 1500x ROAS that you mentioned, how much time does it take for a marketer to achieve that number?
So in this case, the client that I'm speaking of has been doing SEO for quite a long time. And it's almost 9 years since the time which they are investing in SEO. And over these years, after investing this much time, energy on SEO, they've moved towards that 1500 ROAS, right? But usually now, let's say if it's a new brand, recently we were working on a retail footwear brand, which was an online shop, and we saw that within a span of 1.5 years, a brand moved from the first month ROS of 0.5x to 20x. So even that, when we speak of 20x, that's a much decent number as compared to the other channels.
I understood that for online stores, this would be easy since revenue is a part of transaction. How would ROAS be captured for non-retail stores like insurances or service industries?
In such cases where the revenue cannot be directly attributed to the online medium, what could be done? The marketers can yet work out on the cost per lead, and based on that arrive at an ROS. Let's take in case of an insurance client. Assume that these people are getting, let's say, 100 customers per day, 10 leads per day, and based on that, they're getting a particular revenue. I'll just keep the numbers low for the easier explanation. With this particular thing, we know that, okay, of the 100 leads and customers are converting, so the conversion rate is 10%, right? And they also know that, hey, what is the revenue which they're getting from this 10 customer? From this particular thing, they know that, hey, what's my average revenue per customer? And from that particular thing, divided by 10, and they would arrive at cost per lead. So let's say if the cost per customer is 1000 rupees, the cost per lead may go down to 100 rupees. Now, let's say today that particular website received 1000 leads. With the easy multiplication of cost per lead with the number of leads, they can arrive at the estimated revenue, which can be attributed to this many number of leads which they have got on a particular day. And via this, they can, and using the ROS formula, total revenue divided by total cost which is invested on the channel, they can easily arrive at an ROS. So even for that matter, insurance or service or any other industry where at least some mechanism is available to attribute or arrive at an ROS, it is desired they arrive at an ROS, so that what is happening right now without any numbers can be measured, and they can start improving their profitability, revenue, and returns.
Could you please share a few tips for the marketers, please?
A tip for marketer would be overall when you're investing in marketing, experiment with all the channels. See which are the channels which are performing via the ROS, and move your funds at least a little from the channels which are non-performing to the performing channels. This is going to help you improve your overall ROS and overall returns on marketing spends. You will see channels like paid, which are needed essentially. You need to invest on Google, Facebook in the initial run so that at least you get some returns or some transactions on your website. In the long run, channels like SEO, where you are going to see a huge ROS, are desired so that at least in the long run, you move to better profitability. At the same time, channels like social and others would be needed to capture the newer audience, which you are not able to get via some other mediums. So an overall holistic approach to digital marketing is one which I would advise. At the same time, keep on looking at the numbers.